In the last video, we talked a little about why Zorro is such a great tool for independent traders, and you're probably keen to get your hands on it and start playing with it yourself. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to download and install Zorro. I'm also going to give you a brief tour of the Zorro file structure, which will go a long way to furthering your understanding of how the software works. The first thing you need to do is head over to the Zorro website. Zorro-trader.com. This is the homepage of the Zorro project, where you can find links to download the software and access the online user manual and the Zorro forums. The one we're interested in today is the download link. Clicking this takes me to this download page, and I just need to fill out this simple form in order to have the software download link emailed to me. I've previously filled out this form, so I'm just going to jump across to my email. And you can see here that I have an email from Zorro, and this here is the download link to the Zorro installer. So I'm just going to click on that and start downloading the Zorro installer. This will take a few minutes, so I'm just going to pause the video and come back once the installer has finished downloading. Okay, so my Zorro installer has finished downloading. So I'm going to open a Windows Explorer instance and navigate to my Downloads folder. You can see that the installer is here in this folder. It's the file named zorrosetup.exe. I can either double-click or right-click and select Run as Administrator to run the Zorro installer. And that will kick off the installation process. You can see that I get a warning that I have a previous copy of Zorro installed on my machine. When I install a newer version of Zorro, the old one actually doesn't get replaced. The two installations can exist side by side. The warning isn't a problem, it's just an FYI type warning. You may need to manually copy across any scripts or data that you used with the previous version if you had one installed. I click OK, and then I come to the first of a series of steps that I will need to either review or provide some information before clicking Next. It's worth reading through each of these. Here we have the license agreement, which you'll need to either accept or decline. Next, we have a README file with some useful information. I can enter my name, and I can also choose where I want to install Zorro. I'm going to install Zorro in my Program Files directory, which is a fairly normal place to install software on a Windows operating system. But you can in fact run Zorro from pretty much anywhere you like. I'm also going to append the directory name with the version number of my Zorro installation. And that's a good idea just so that you can keep track of the different versions of Zorro. New versions are released regularly, normally about every quarter, and I like to make it obvious which directory belongs to which version of Zorro. You can also add shortcuts to your desktop and your quick launch bar if you like. And then finally, I just need to confirm the settings that I've input and click Next if I'm happy with those. And that then kicks off the actual installation process. And that should all happen pretty quickly. It shouldn't take more than about 30 seconds to a minute. And that's all there is to it. I'm going to deselect this option and not run the program immediately. And that's because I want to navigate to the Zorro installation folder and just give you a quick tour of exactly what Zorro just installed on your PC and how that relates to your use of the software. There are some important files and subfolders that you'll need to be familiar with, and learning about these now will make the Zorro learning curve that much smoother down the track. Okay, so I'm just going to navigate to my program files where I installed Zorro. And here you can see the folder where we just installed our Zorro software. And if I just click into that, you can see here that there are a whole bunch of files and subfolders that make up the Zorro software. And there's a few that are really important and that you'll need to be quite familiar with. So let's go through those now. The first one is the file that launches the actual interface to Zorro, zorro.exe. So if I double click that executable, the Zorro interface will start up and I can start interacting with it. I'll be going through this interface in detail in the next video. This one here, zorro.chm, is also an important file. It contains the Zorro help manual, which you can see is organized into chapters and pages, which you can click from the table of contents. The search function is also really useful and one that you'll find yourself using a lot. It definitely does help to know about the help file that was downloaded with your Zorro installation, but do get into the habit of regularly checking the online manual too. That's because the online manual will alert you to updates, bugs, and bug fixes as soon as they become available, whereas the static version of the manual that lives in your Zorro folder won't. Another really important file is this zorro.ini file. It's like a configuration file for Zorro and contains a bunch of settings that you can customize. You'll need to customize this file when you want to do things like configure Zorro to send commands to the R software package, which is one way to greatly extend the capabilities of Zorro. There are several modules dedicated to using Zorro and R together in the advanced course, if you're interested in checking that out. Now, one small problem with Zorro.ini is that it doesn't persist between Zorro updates. That means that you can painstakingly configure your Zorro software only to have the configuration file overwritten when you install a new version. To get around that inconvenience, the Zorro developers recently introduced the zorrofix.ini file. This one does persist between Zorro versions, and it contains exactly the same information as is contained in your zorro.ini file. But the first time you use this file, you'll need to create it yourself. Just make a copy of zorro.ini and rename it to zorrofix.ini. When Zorro detects both zorro.ini and zorrofix.ini files, zorrofix.ini overrides zorro.ini. Also, when you install a new version of Zorro, zorrofix.ini will be automatically copied across to your new installation. It's one of the only files that persists between Zorro installations. When you've installed a new version, it's all too easy to forget about zorrofix.ini and start editing zorro.ini instead. This will lead to frustrations when your changes to zorro.ini appear to result in no changes to the behavior of the software. That's because zorrofix.ini is overriding it. so just be aware of that one. So let's open zorrofix.ini in a text editor and take a look. There are a bunch of configuration parameters here that are quite important that you can and should adjust as necessary. We won't go through all of them right now, but there are a couple that I want to show you. Firstly, there is this history folder parameter. And that one just defines the folder where Zorro will go looking for our market data files. Customizing this one is really useful because it means that I can use one single repository of market data and share it amongst my Zorro instances, rather than making multiple copies of my data. You can also see here that the history folder doesn't contain a full file path. Like for instance, this parameter here. If I supply a name and not a full path, as in the history variable here, Zorro assumes that I've supplied a subfolder that exists within the Zorro installation directory. And you can see the file named history does in fact exist within our installation directory. I'll show you more about this history folder shortly. These two parameters here are also quite useful. They enable you to get data from the Quandl and AlphaVantage web services. In order to do that, you'll need to sign up to those services and obtain your own API key, which is your password for accessing those services. When you've got your API keys, you'll need to enter them here. And that enables Zorro to work directly with those services and download data on your behalf. There are a few other interesting and important configuration parameters that you will use as time goes on. I'm not going to go into those just now because we'll come back to this in some detail in another video. For now, I just wanted to make the point that this file is important and that it does exist, and just make you aware of it and where it lives in your Zorro installation. Now, as well as those three files, you'll also see a bunch of subfolders that are included in your Zorro installation, and I just want to point out some of the more important ones here. First of all, this is the history folder, which is the one that we just met in our configuration file. And if I open it up, we'll see that Zorro actually comes shipped with some EURUSD market data going back to 2005. This .t6 format is unique to Zorro, and it's a fast and efficient way to store market data in a binary format. And you can always convert your own data into this format, which is something I'll show you how to do in another video. Now, as well as market data, this history folder contains a bunch of CSV files as well, and these are quite important. First of all, the accounts CSV file. We only have an example here, but you can create the real thing and call it accounts.csv rather than accountsexample.csv. And it contains the details of your personal trading accounts that you'd like to access with Zorro. You can use both real and demo accounts here. If you configure these correctly inside this CSV file, you can access those accounts directly from within the Zorro interface, which is super convenient. You'll need Zorro S to do this, which is the commercial version of Zorro. I'll show you how this works and exactly how to set this file up in another video, but for now I just want you to know that this file exists and where it lives. Now, these assets files are critical as well. We refer to them as asset lists or just asset files. They contain the trading conditions that you'll be simulating with the Zorro backtester. And by trading conditions, I mean things like spread, commission, and swaps that you'll pay with a particular broker. as well as the margin costs for holding various positions. That stuff is really important if you want to accurately simulate what you'll see with your broker, so it is important to set these up correctly. Fortunately, Zorro does have some pretty convenient tools for accessing your broker's trading conditions and updating these files automatically at regular intervals. I'll show you how that works in another video as well. And we can have separate files for each broker we want to simulate and call these easily from within Zorro scripts. For instance, Assets IB refers to the trading conditions of interactive brokers. Assets OANDA provides the same sort of information but for OANDA. Again, I'll come back to these in a later video and show you how to set these up and keep them up to date. But for now, I just wanted to show you that they exist and where you can find them. Another folder that you'll need to be familiar with is the Data folder, and it contains files related to individual trading scripts that you create with Zorro. For example, if you use Zorro's optimizer to optimize a particular strategy, those optimization parameters will be stored as files in this Data folder. Likewise, if you go ahead and train machine learning models related to a particular strategy, those will also wind up in your Data folder. The Log folder is also important. It will contain the output of any backtests that you run with Zorro. For example, a text file consisting of a backtest's statistics, CSV files containing all the actual trades from a backtest, image files of equity curves, and parameter optimization histograms. And in live trading, you'll also have your live trading logs wind up in this folder as well. The Strategy folder contains the trading scripts that you'll write with Zorro, and you can see that Zorro comes bundled with a whole bunch of different example scripts. And I definitely recommend going through these and taking a look. They make a really good starting point for learning Zorro and exploring its functionality. And of course, there are a whole bunch of scripts available in the Robot Wealth courses as well. So quite often you won't have to reinvent the wheel when you want to build a script around a particular trading idea. So definitely get familiar with the scripts that live here in the Strategy folder and the ones available in the Robot Wealth courses, as that will save you a great deal of time. And just briefly, if I go back to my Zorro interface, you can see that the files that are contained in the Script drop-down menu are the ones contained in the Strategy folder. And likewise, the assets that you see in the Assets scroll box are the ones contained in one of our asset lists, the assetsfix.csv file to be precise. Remember, those live in the History folder of the Zorro installation. You might also recall that we only have data for Euro-US dollar at the moment. That means that if we tried to simulate a script with any other of these assets, Zorro would throw an error. I'm going to give you a much more detailed tour of the Zorro interface in the next video, and later on I'll show you how to get data for other instruments as well. Now there's one more folder I want to show you before we're done, and that's the Notepad++ folder. Notepad++ is a free and open source text editor designed for fast and efficient coding in multiple languages. It's not a Zorro program as such, but the Zorro developers did release a Notepad++ plugin for coding in Zorro's scripting language, which is known as Lite-C. That means that we have super useful tools like syntax highlighting and code completion available to us when we edit our Zorro scripts in Notepad++. For beginners, those tools make learning to code in Zorro so much simpler and much more forgiving than would otherwise be the case. And for those with more experience, Notepad++ makes coding with Zorro incredibly fast and efficient. We'll run through a brief tour of Notepad++ in the next video, and I'll show you one or two of its productivity hacks. One of the things I recommend you do is find the Notepad++ executable. That's this one here. And create a shortcut on your desktop by right-clicking and selecting Send to Desktop. And then if you go to your desktop, you'll find a shortcut to Notepad++ that you can use for text editing outside of Zorro as well. If you're not familiar with Notepad++, just Google it and you'll find lots of information. If you haven't used it before, you'll probably be quite surprised at just how powerful it is. A more advanced trick is to have a standalone Notepad++ installation separate to your Zorro installation, and then point Zorro at it via the zorrofix.ini configuration file that we met previously. I'll show you how to set that up in another video too. So there's a few ways now that I can open Notepad++. I can navigate to the executable and double-click, or I can navigate to my desktop and double-click the shortcut I just created. Yet another way is I can go to my Zorro interface and in the script drop-down box, right down at the bottom, select New Script. And you can see that that will automatically open Notepad++ along with a new file that I can start editing. And that brings us to the end of this video on how to download and install Zorro and navigate the installation directory. Join me in the next video where I'll give you a guided tour of Zorro's interface, code a really simple trading strategy, and then trade it in a demo environment using Zorro.